Judicial power includes the duty of the Court of Justice. The duty of the Court of Justice. It's not just a grant of power. It says duty. In other words, the court cannot refuse to exercise the power. So judicial power includes the duty of the courts of justice to determine whether or not there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction on the part of any branch or instrumentality of the government. The operative phrase is grave abuse of discretion. And they can use this phrase in order to check the exercise of power of any branch or instrumentality of the government, including Congress and the executive. So that is appeared here last Monday. I presented a brief position paper. And in my exposition, my principal thesis is that this Article 17, Section 1(1) of the Constitution is the source of all this chaos and confusion. It is the root cause because this provision, as accepted even by retired Justice Ascuna, who was a member of the CONCOM, is intended for a unicameral Congress. That is an established fact. Nobody disputes that. And if you read it, it says the Congress, upon a vote of 3/4 of all its members. So by just reading it, you will comprehend that it is silent on so many points. Silent on the meaning of Congress, silent on how the two houses shall meet, silent also on how the voting shall be made. And this silence is precisely again due to the fact that this provision is for a unicameral Congress. And because of this ambiguity, you now have this situation where you have schools of thought contending against each other, giving various interpretations of this ambiguous provision. This provision which is fit for a unicameral Congress. I made this exposition and I emphasize that I am not passing judgment on the merits or the merits of this contending school of thoughts. I said that this school of thoughts, these two schools of thought, can be justified by logic including the history of this provision. And I warn that because of this, we are in uncharted water. Uncharted water. And the possibility is that there will be a case which will challenge the constitutionality of this resolution number 7. And I said that perhaps we should avoid that possibility. A case going to the Supreme Court seriously challenging the constitutionality of this resolution number 7. We know that if that probability happens, all this desire of us, all these wishes of us that we invite foreign business may not come to reality. Because once this case gets pending in the Supreme Court, we do not know the time when the case will be decided. We do not know how the court will decide. If you are a foreign investor, will you invest under that kind of an environment? And so I propose 2 or 3 ways by which we can avoid that judicial road. The political way, and then the way by which Congress, in the exercise of its constituent function, can just repeal this provision, which got into the Constitution by inadvertence. And I propose that it gets repealed, and Congress, in the exercise of its function of amending or revising the Constitution, can then make the appropriate provision on how Congress, in the exercise of its constituent function, can amend or revise the Constitution. And that can easily be done because the classic traditional way of making the amendment or revision on the part of Congress assembled as a constituent body is right there in the 1935 Constitution. And I read Article 15, Section 1. This is the provision on amending or revising the Constitution on the part of Congress exercising its constituent function. The traditional classical way. And it states, the Congress in joint session assembled by a vote of 3/4 of all the members of the Senate and of the House of Representatives, voting separately, may propose amendments to this Constitution or call a convention for this purpose. This is the correct provision. When Congress consists of 2 bodies, when it is a bicameral Congress, it is complete, Your Honors. It says, Congress in joint session. All the details are here. Congress must be in joint session by a vote of 3/4 of all the members of the Senate and of the House, voting separately. So if you have this kind of a provision, you do not only have a grant of power to the Senate and the House to convene as a constituent body and to propose amendments or revision of the Constitution. You do not only have that grant of power, but all the details, all the specifics are spelled out here. How the two bodies shall meet is spelled out. How they will vote is spelled out also. So this is the classic definition which should be embedded in case there is a repeal of Article 17, Section 1. But again, Your Honors, as I stated, I only exposed to this House the various schools of thought. And I said I'm not passing judgment on the merits or the merits of this school of thoughts. My warning is that considering these serious divisions, most probably this House resolution will be questioned in the Supreme Court. That is my prefatory statement, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. But how about the phrase unless otherwise provided by law?
Yes, again, Your Honor, with your leave, I was not able to very exhaustively discuss why this seemingly innocuous phrase, unless otherwise provided by law, may invite a constitutional challenge. So, Your Honors, I wish to stress a universal principle that is required in amending or revising a constitution. This basic universal principle is that any constitutional change from the molecular to the manifest must be approved or disapproved by the people. The self-evident reason for this, Your Honor, is that a constitution is a covenant by the people, of the people, and for the people. And in unadorned language, this affirms the axiom that the people reigns as sovereign in a democracy. That is why in our 1935, 1973, 1987 Constitution, all of these constitutions proclaim in solemn words that sovereignty resides in the people and all government authority emanates from them. And I would like to draw your attention to the fact that our 1935 and 1973 constitutions allow their amendment or revision only in two ways: through a constitutional convention or a constituent assembly. But either way, the amendment or revision must be ratified by the majority vote of our people in an appropriate plebiscite. It is the blessing of the people that gives life and instills a living spirit to any change in the Constitution. Let me stress, Your Honors, that this requirement of approval by the people under our 1935 and 1973 constitutions was imposed while the architecture of our state is that of a republican state. Let me repeat that, Your Honors. The design of our state under the 1935 and 1973 Constitution was that of a republican state. That is why Article 2, Section 1 of the 1935 Constitution states, and I quote, "The Philippines is a republican state." In identical words, Article 2, Section 1 of the 1973 Constitution provides, and I quote, "The Philippines is a republican state." Our 1987 Constitution, Your Honors, redesigned the nature of our state as a republican state. This transcendental change is reflected in the very first section of our Declaration of Principles and State Policies. Section 1 of Article 2 of the 1987 Constitution. Our Constitution now declares, "The Philippines is a democratic and republican state." Note, Your Honors, that under our 1987 Constitution, the Constitution now, the Philippine state is first described as a democratic state. In contradistinction, our 1935 and 1973 Constitutions did not describe our state as democratic, but only as a republican state. By no means is this a mere cosmetic change. This mega change established direct democracy in our 1987 Constitution. Hence, in our 1987 Constitution, we now have different ways by which our people can exercise directly their sovereign power. Among these instruments of direct democracy given to our people are referendum, initiative, and recall. Hence, Your Honors, the 1987 Constitution included people's initiative as another way of amending the Constitution, which was not allowed in the 1935 and 1973 Constitutions. But still and all, the 1935, the 1973, and the 1987 Constitutions reaffirmed the principle that any change in the Constitution, even a change in punctuation marks, must be approved or disapproved by the people. So, you're presenting from these premises. It is my humble submission that this sacred principle stands in danger of being violated by the use and operation of the phrase "unless provided by law." This sacrosanct principle requires the holding of a referendum to determine the approval or disapproval of the people of a proposed change in the Constitution. Your Honors, this kind of referendum is what is known in constitutional law as obligatory referendum. Obligatory referendum is mandatory in its sense and essence. This referendum was obligatory under our 1935 and 1973 Constitution, even when our state was Republican in character. It is doubly obligatory in our 1987 Constitution when our state metamorphosed into both a democratic and Republican state. And this obligatory referendum can be aborted if amendments or revisions of the Constitution can be done by mere enactment of laws. For it is evident that such laws do not have to be submitted to the people for their effectivity. Such short-circuiting of the power of the people to approve or disapprove any change in the Constitution subverts their sovereignty. And this answers us, Your Honors, to the next question. Whether the phrase "unless provided by law" can be interpreted as a waiver by the people of their power to approve or disapprove any change in our Constitution, or whether the same phrase can be interpreted as a delegation by the people of their said power to the members of Congress when they are changing the Constitution in the exercise of their lawmaking power. Again, Your Honors, my humble submission to both question is no. The obligatory referendum required especially in the 1987 Constitution cannot be waived by the people, neither can it be delegated to Congress. There are two kinds of referendum of this nature: the obligatory and the non-obligatory, also known in constitutional law as advisory referendum. What is installed in our 1987 Constitution is the obligatory kind of referendum. In so doing, Your Honors, our 1987 Constitution emphasized more the characteristic of a democratic state, meaning a state that is a government by the people, more than the characteristic that it is a government for the people. The whole design of our 1987 Constitution rests on the premise that our state is a democratic and republican state. Therefore, the sovereign power of the people to approve any change in the Constitution can neither be waived nor can be delegated. That is my response to your question, Your Honor.
You mentioned constitutional challenge, Your Honor, and I would like to refresh you under Article 8, Section 1 of the Judicial Power, which I may be allowed to read. I'll go straight to the point. Judicial power includes the duty of the courts of justice to settle actual controversies involving the rights which are legally demandable and enforceable. May I solicit again and educate us the meaning of actual controversies and if there are requisites that are needed for these actual controversies, Your Honor, please.
Your Honor, let me preface my answer by going to the historical background of this provision. We have the 1935 Constitution and then the 1973 Constitution. And under these two constitutions, the Supreme Court in resolving certain cases avoided decisions by invoking political questions. And we had the People Power Revolution in 1986. And this 87 Constitution could not have been promulgated without the 1986 People Power Revolution. So we have that People Power Revolution. Before the 1997 Constitution, we have the Freedom Constitution, which is embodied in Proclamation number 3, issued by then President Cory Aquino. So you have the 87 Constitution. What happened in the 87 Constitution is that the framers reallocated the powers of government. In the reallocation, the redistribution of the powers of government, the framers of the 87 Constitution gave more powers to the judiciary, gave more checking powers to the Supreme Court. And how did they do this? They expanded, Your Honors, the definition of judicial power. They expanded the parameters of the power of the Supreme Court. Look at Article 8, Section 1 of the 1987 Constitution, where it says, and I quote, judicial power includes the duty of the Court of Justice. The duty of the Court of Justice. It's not just a grant of power. It says duty. In other words, the court cannot refuse to exercise the power. So judicial power includes the duty of the courts of justice to determine whether or not there has been a grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction on the part of any branch or instrumentality of the government. The operative phrase is grave abuse of discretion. And they can use this phrase in order to check the exercise of power of any branch or instrumentality of the government, including Congress and the executive. So that is how, Your Honor, judicial power was expanded under the 1987 Constitution.
How about, Your Honor, actual controversy?
For the Supreme Court, Your Honor, to exercise its power, its jurisdiction, that requirement of actual controversy is still there. In other words, the Supreme Court cannot accept any case that simply raises a hypothetical issue. There must be an actual case or controversy. And again, Your Honor, as I was discussing with some of the distinguished members of the House a while ago, perhaps in some other time, we can entertain the idea about how the power of the Supreme Court can be invoked in an appropriate case. Today, Your Honor, we followed the American model. The model where there is a separation of powers. The judiciary is separate from the executive, separate from the legislature. And the judiciary, the Supreme Court, can intervene only in an actual case or controversy. In other jurisdictions, Your Honor, they do not anymore follow this model of strict separation of powers. Instead, they followed the model that is known as fusion of powers. What does this mean? How is this different from the principle of separation of powers? In other countries, Your Honor, when you have this kind of a dispute, this kind of a case, like this resolution number 7, the legislature is empowered under their constitution to ask their Supreme Court to render what is known as an advisory opinion. In other words, in their jurisdiction, there is no need for an actual case or controversy. Even while a bill is pending in their legislature, when the bill is not important, the legislature can already ask the Supreme Court to render an advisory opinion. There is yet no case or controversy. In other words, there is fusion of powers. And by that way, Your Honor, they are able to pass laws which can no longer be questioned in actual cases or controversies. That is one model, Your Honor, that perhaps we can adopt in our jurisdiction.
Again, Your Honor, please, will you please guide us? How do we reconcile Article 17, Section 1.1, for us to bring this matter before the Supreme Court?
Your Honor, I submitted 2 ways by which we can prevent a test case going to the Supreme Court. The first way I suggested is the political way. Submit this issue to the people themselves so that once and for all, we can know what is the intent of the people when they approve this Article 17, Section 1. And that should be the case, Your Honor, because we are interpreting the Constitution, and it is the people that approve this constitution. It is their intent that should govern. That is one way. We can seek the purpose of the people in an obligatory or even in a non-obligatory referendum. And I like to think that if we are able to do that, you know, the voice of the people, the judgment of the people will not be reviewed by the Supreme Court because that is a patent political question. And of course, the other way is through Congress exercising its constituent function. And I was suggesting that Congress would just repeal this provision that is intended for a unicameral Congress, and then put in the appropriate provision that will end the controversy.